You just got a promotion. And the first thing you did, before you even celebrated, was grab your phone and start texting people to explain why you deserved it. You cancelled plans with a friend last week, and you spent 45 minutes crafting the perfect excuse. You made a decision about your life, your career, your relationship, your money, and you felt this uncomfortable itch, this almost physical need, to justify it to people who didn't even ask. Here's what nobody ever told you. That itch, that need to explain yourself, it's costing you your power, your confidence, and in some cases, your actual life. Today, we're going to talk about 10 lessons, 10 brutal, liberating, life-changing lessons about why you need to stop explaining your life to other people. And I promise you this, by the end of this video, you're going to feel something shift. Something you've been carrying for years is going to get lighter. But first, stay with me, because lesson number 1 is the one that's going to reframe everything else. Let's get into it. Drop this in your notes app right now. My life, my call, no explanation needed. Lesson 1. You don't owe anyone an explanation. When did you sign the contract? No, seriously. When did you sit down, pick up a pen, and agree that every decision you make in your life has to be approved, validated, or understood by the people around you? You didn't. Nobody did. But most of us are living like we did. We walk around with this invisible contract in our heads, this unspoken agreement that says, if I do something, I must explain it. If someone questions me, I must justify myself. If someone disagrees, I must convince them. And here's the wild part. Nobody gave you that contract. You wrote it yourself. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, you absorbed a belief that your choices need external permission to be valid. Think about where that came from. Maybe you had parents who questioned every decision. Maybe you grew up in an environment where your choices were criticized or dismissed. Maybe you went to schools where you were graded not just on what you did, but on how well you could explain what you did. And somewhere along the way, explanation became a survival mechanism. If I can explain it well enough, they won't reject me. If I can justify it clearly enough, they won't judge me. If I can make them understand, I'll be safe. Here's what that pattern does to you over time. It trains your brain to seek external validation before trusting internal wisdom. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Read that again slowly. Power over your mind, not over other people's opinions, not over how they receive your decisions, your mind, your inner world. That is the only territory you were ever meant to govern. Every time you over-explain, you are abandoning that territory. You are leaving your own inner world unguarded and handing the keys to someone who was never supposed to have them. The Stoics called the inner world the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, the command center of the self, and their entire philosophy was built around protecting it, strengthening it, never surrendering it to external pressure. When you stop explaining, when you make peace with the fact that not everyone will understand your choices, and that's completely fine, you reclaim that command center. You take back the keys. You don't owe anyone an explanation, not because you're arrogant, not because you don't care about people, but because your decisions belong to you, and you are the only one who has to live with them. If this hit you, type it in the comments. I decide, I move, no permission asked. Lesson 2. Over-explaining is a trauma response. This might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Over-explaining is not a communication style, it is not a personality trait, and it is absolutely not a sign of intelligence or thoughtfulness. even though that's what many of us tell ourselves. Over-explaining is, in most cases, a trauma response. Now, before you close this video and say, "I don't have trauma," stay with me. Because trauma doesn't only mean big, catastrophic events. Trauma is any experience that taught your nervous system that it wasn't safe to simply exist without justifying your existence. Growing up in a home where your feelings were dismissed, where you said, "I'm sad," and the response was, "You don't have a reason to be sad." So you learned to build a legal case for your emotions before you express them, growing up with a critical parent, where every decision was scrutinized, where you got the message, spoken or unspoken, that your judgment couldn't be trusted. So you started outsourcing your judgment to others, being in a relationship, romantic, professional, or friendship, where you were constantly questioned or made to feel that your perspective was invalid. So you developed over-explaining as a preemptive defense. This is the part most self-help content skips. They'll tell you to be more confident or stop seeking approval, but they won't tell you why you seek approval in the first place. And when you don't understand the why, the habit doesn't change. It just goes underground. Here's what over-explaining actually looks like in daily life. You send a text and immediately send 3 follow-up texts explaining what you meant. You make a decision, and before anyone questions it, you've already preloaded your explanation. You say no to something and then spend the next 10 minutes justifying the no. You accomplish something, and instead of simply receiving a compliment, you immediately list all the reasons your achievement wasn't actually that impressive. That last one. That's one of the most overlooked forms of over-explaining. When someone says, "Great job," and you say, "Oh, it was nothing. I got lucky. I had a lot of help." You are explaining away your own success, making other people comfortable with your achievement by diminishing it. Epictetus, who was born into slavery and became one of the greatest philosophers in history, said this: "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." Here's how that applies to this. When you over-explain, you are trying to make reality conform to what you wish it was, a world where everyone approves of you, but reality doesn't negotiate. People will judge, people will question, people will misunderstand. The Stoic response is not to explain harder. It is to accept that judgment exists, and to stop allowing the possibility of it to govern your behavior. Start noticing, over the next 48 hours, every time you feel the urge to over-explain. Don't judge it, just notice it. And ask yourself one question: am I explaining because this serves the conversation, or am I explaining because I'm afraid? That question alone will start to change things. Say this out loud right where you're sitting. Old patterns end here. I choose differently now. Lesson 3. The more you explain, the less people believe you. There's a psychological principle called the over-justification effect, and it reveals something completely counterintuitive about human behavior. When you give someone too much justification for something, their brain actually starts to trust it less. Not more, less. Think about the last time someone was trying to convince you of something. A salesperson, a politician, a friend with an agenda. Did they over-explain? Did they give you 17 reasons why something was true? Did they seem almost desperate for you to believe them? What happened in your gut? You trusted them less, because here's what the human brain reads when it receives over-explanation. If this person feels the need to justify this much, there must be something worth questioning. The psychological term for this is reactance. When someone pushes too hard for you to believe something, your brain naturally pushes back. Now imagine 2 people get asked why they left their last job. Person A says, Well, it was a combination of factors, really. The management style wasn't aligned with my values, and there were some communication issues, and I felt like my skills weren't being utilized, and also the commute was really difficult, and honestly the culture wasn't great. Person B says, "It was time for a new challenge. I learned everything I could learn there." Who do you trust more? Person B. Every time. Not because their answer is more honest. Maybe all of Person A's reasons are completely true, but Person B's answer communicates something Person A's doesn't. Certainty, groundedness, self-possession. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Self-respect in communication looks like speaking with economy. It looks like trusting that your words carry enough weight without being buried under an avalanche of justification. Every extra word you pile onto a statement out of fear is a quiet act of self-disrespect. It says, "I don't trust my own voice to be enough." The way you present information, not just the information itself, is a signal of your confidence level. And over-explanation is one of the loudest signals that says, "I'm not sure about this yet." The goal isn't to become cold or withholding. The goal is to share from a place of fullness, not fear. When you share from fullness, you say, "Here's what I've decided and why it matters to me." When you share from fear, you say, "Here's what I've decided, but let me give you 16 reasons so you don't judge me." Can you feel the difference? Screenshot this and put it somewhere you'll see it daily. Less words, more power. Lesson 4. The people who need you to explain yourself don't actually trust you. Think about the last time you felt compelled to explain yourself. Really think about it. Who were you explaining yourself to? In most cases, it's not strangers. It's the people closest to you. Your partner, your parents, your best friend, your sibling. And here's the uncomfortable truth embedded in that pattern. The need to constantly over-explain to someone who is supposed to love you unconditionally is often a symptom of a trust deficit in that relationship. Genuine trust doesn't require constant justification. Think about your most secure relationship. The person you'd call at 2 a.m. Do you over-explain to them? Probably not. You say, "I need this," and they say, "Okay." There's a baseline assumption of goodwill that makes constant explanation unnecessary. Now think about the relationships where you over-explain. What's missing? In many cases, it's one of three things. A history of having your judgment dismissed. Conditional love or approval, where love feels like it depends on your performance. Or a power imbalance, where the less powerful person feels they must justify their choices to the more powerful one. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach." The Stoics were deliberate about their inner circle, not because they were elitist, but because they understood that the people you spend the most time with shape the internal dialogue you carry even when you're alone. If the people closest to you constantly demand explanation, over time you internalize that demand. You start cross-examining yourself before anyone else gets the chance. Here's a tool to use. Take your top 5 relationships, and for each one, ask yourself, when I share a decision with this person, what's my default expectation of their response? If your default expectation is acceptance, that relationship has a foundation of trust. If your default expectation is questioning or judgment, that relationship has a trust deficit worth addressing. This doesn't mean cutting people off. It means knowing which relationships require emotional preparation and why. Because you can love someone and also acknowledge that they don't make you feel safe enough to be fully yourself. Both things can be true at the same time. If your relationships came to mind just now, write this down. Trust is earned. Proof is not required. Lesson 5. Silence is not a weakness. It's your superpower. Most people are terrified of silence. The moment a conversation pauses, the moment someone asks a question and there's a beat of quiet, most people rush to fill it. And in that rush, they overexplain, they ramble, they say things they didn't mean to say. They give information nobody asked for, all because they couldn't tolerate 3 seconds of silence. Here's what you need to understand about silence from a psychological perspective. Silence creates space, and space in human communication is where meaning lives. When you speak without pause, you leave no room for your words to land, no room for the other person to process, no room for the weight of what you've said to register. But when you speak and then allow silence, your words carry more gravity, more authority, more presence. Imagine you're in a job interview. The interviewer asks, "Why should we hire you?" Response: A. Well, I have a lot of experience in this field, and I think I work really well with teams, and I'm a quick learner, and I've had some really good results in past roles, and I'm really passionate about this industry. Response B. 3 seconds of deliberate silence. Then, because I've done this exact job before, and I made my last company $3 million doing it. Then silence again. Which person gets the job? Person B. Not just because of the content, because of what the pause communicated before the answer even started. That pause said, "I'm not nervous. I'm choosing my words. I don't need to fill every moment of this conversation with noise." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed." That quote is about intellectual security. It's about being so grounded in your own values and reasoning that you don't need to perform certainty through volume or speed. The truly secure person can pause, can sit in silence, can let questions hang in the air without scrambling to answer them instantly, because their sense of self doesn't depend on how quickly they can fill the void. Here's the practice. Before you answer any high-stakes question, a difficult question from a partner, a challenging question in a meeting, a provocative question from someone trying to rattle you, pause for 3 seconds. Not fidgety or uncomfortable, still, intentional. Look at the person, take 1 breath, then speak. This does several things. It gives your brain time to choose the right words instead of defaulting to verbal panic. It signals that you're grounded, not reactive, and it prevents over-explanation, because when you pause and choose deliberately, you say less. And when you say less, you say more. Next time someone pressures you to respond fast, remember, my silence speaks louder than their noise. Lesson 6. Stop defending yourself in arguments. Here's what to do instead. Here's a scene you've probably lived. You're in an argument. Someone accuses you of something. Maybe it's true, maybe it's false, maybe it's somewhere in the middle. And immediately, before they've even finished their sentence, you're building your defense. Your heart rate goes up. Your thoughts start racing. You're gathering evidence, forming rebuttals, preparing your case. And by the time they stop talking, you're not listening anymore. You're just waiting for your turn to explain yourself. This is called defensive reactivity, and it is one of the most relationship-destroying, confidence-undermining communication habits that exists. When you immediately defend yourself in response to criticism, you communicate several things, none of which help you. You communicate that you feel threatened, and when people see that you feel threatened, it often confirms to them that they've hit a nerve. You signal that you're more interested in being right than in understanding what happened, and you hand the other person enormous power over your emotional state. So, what do you do instead? When someone criticizes you or challenges you, instead of immediately defending, you absorb. You say, "That's interesting. Tell me more about what you mean by that." Or, "I hear you. Let me think about that." Or simply, "Okay." Not okay, but just okay. This feels deeply counterintuitive, because everything in your nervous system is screaming, defend, justify, explain. But here's what happens when you absorb instead. You completely disrupt the pattern of the conflict. The other person was expecting resistance. They were braced for it. When you don't give it to them, the energy of the argument deflates. You also give yourself time to figure out whether the criticism actually has merit. A lot of the time, defensive reactivity prevents us from benefiting from legitimate feedback because we're too busy fighting it off. Epictetus said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" Read that and let it land. The Stoic response to criticism is not defense. It is perspective. It is the quiet, unshakable awareness that your worth is not determined by someone else's opinion of you, and therefore their criticism carries no existential threat. You can consider it calmly. Take what's useful. Release what isn't, without the whole thing becoming a battle for your identity. That is real power. Not the power to win arguments, the power to not need to. The next time someone tries to pull you into an argument, repeat this to yourself. I don't defend, I don't collapse, I stand. Lesson 7. How to communicate powerfully without over-explaining. By now you understand why you over-explain. You understand what it costs you. But here's the practical question. How do you actually communicate differently? What do you say when you need to explain something without over-explaining it? Here's a simple framework. I call it the ACE framework. 3 parts, easy to remember, immediately applicable. A stands for assertion, C stands for context, E stands for end. Most over-explanation happens because people lead with context and never get to the assertion, or they assert something, get anxious, and then pile on so much context that the assertion gets buried. The ACE framework flips that. First, assert. Start with your point, your decision, your answer, your boundary. Say it clearly, say it first. Instead of, "Well, I've been thinking about this for a while, and there are a lot of factors, and after weighing everything I decided that maybe I might want to consider not attending the event." Say, "I won't be at the event." Full stop. Start there. Second, context. If context adds value to the conversation, offer it, but minimal. One reason, one sentence, maybe 2, not a paragraph, not a list. I have a prior commitment. Done. Third, end. End the explanation. Don't add qualifiers. Don't apologize. Don't trail off into another round of justification. I won't be at the event. I have a prior commitment. Silence. That's it. Someone asks why you left a relationship. Old response. It's complicated. We had some issues with communication, and I think we wanted different things, but I still care about them, and it wasn't really either of our faults. The timing was just off. And ace response. It wasn't the right fit for either of us. If pressed, we wanted different things. End. Seneca wrote, "Hang on to your gut feelings. They know what they're talking about." That's exactly what the ACE framework protects. Your gut, your knowing, your original, uncontaminated sense of what's true. Every time you pile explanation on top of explanation, you bury your gut feeling under other people's potential reactions. The ACE framework keeps your gut feeling visible, audible, sovereign. When you use this framework consistently, it rewires your internal relationship with your decisions, because the act of asserting clearly, of putting your decision first, before any explanation, trains your brain to lead with confidence, not fear. Over time, you start making decisions differently, because you know that when you make a decision, you're going to have to stand behind it clearly. And that forces you to make better decisions, ones you actually believe in, ones you can assert without wincing. Tattoo this on your brain before your next hard conversation. I say it, I mean it, I stop. Lesson 8. There's a difference between explaining and communicating. Let me be very clear about something. This entire video is not a case for becoming closed off, secretive, disconnected. It's not an argument for stonewalling your partner, for being dismissive at work, for living in an emotional vacuum where nobody gets insight into your inner world. Healthy communication is one of the most important skills a human being can develop. The difference we're drawing here is not between explain and don't explain. The difference is between communication that comes from security and communication that comes from fear. There are specific situations where explaining yourself is not just appropriate, it's essential. When your decision directly impacts someone else who has a stake in the outcome, they deserve a clear, honest explanation. Not because you owe them approval, but because they're genuinely affected. When you make a mistake in a professional setting, a direct explanation of what happened and how you're fixing it is integrity. When you're teaching or mentoring, thorough explanation is literally your job. When vulnerability deepens connection in close relationships, sharing your inner world, your doubts, your reasoning, that's intimacy, not weakness. And when you've genuinely hurt someone and owe them clarity, a real explanation followed by accountability is not weakness, it's character. So here's the filter to apply in any situation where you're wondering whether to explain yourself. Ask, is this explanation serving them, serving us, or serving the relationship, or is it serving my need to feel safe from judgment? If it's the first three, communicate freely, richly, with warmth and detail. If it's the last one, that's the over-explanation we're working to unlearn. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." The Stoic tradition wasn't about becoming cold or unreachable. Stoics had deep friendships, profound love, and fierce loyalty. What they refused to do was let anxiety drive their speech. They communicated from virtue, from genuine care, genuine accountability, genuine connection, not from the need to manage other people's perceptions of them. That's the distinction. Not less communication, better communication. Communication that serves something real. Every word you speak from now on should pass this test. I speak by choice, never by fear. Lesson 9. Your identity is not up for public debate. Here's a question I want you to sit with. Who are you when nobody's watching? Not who you perform, not who you explain, not the version of you that exists in other people's perceptions. Who are you when it's just you? That person, the one who exists before the explanations, before the justifications, before the performance, that's the person we're trying to get back to. There's a concept in psychology called the looking glass self. The idea is that our self-image is largely formed by how we think others see us. We look at ourselves, and then we look at the reflection of ourselves in other people's eyes. And over time, for many of us, the reflection becomes more real than the reality. We start making decisions based on how they'll look to others. We start explaining ourselves endlessly because we've outsourced our identity to external opinion. And what that does over time is this. You lose yourself. Gradually, not dramatically. Each time you over-explain, each time you shrink your truth to fit someone else's comfort, A small piece of your authentic self gets filed away, unexpressed, and then one day you wake up and you don't quite know what you actually want, what you actually think, who you actually are, apart from the version that other people have approved. Epictetus said, "Never say about anything, 'I have lost it, but I have restored it.' Is your child dead? It has been restored. Is your wife dead? She has been restored. Is your estate taken away? Well, and is not that likewise restored? But he who took it away is a bad man. What difference is it to you who the giver assigns to make you a return of what was originally yours?" That's a radical teaching about non-attachment. But apply it here. Your identity doesn't belong to other people's opinions. It was never theirs to hold. Every time you over-explain to protect other people's perception of you, you're trying to hold on to something that was never actually at risk. Your true self cannot be taken away by someone's misunderstanding of you. It can only be abandoned by you. So, begin making small decisions every day without explaining them. Order the meal you actually want without justifying it to the table. Leave the party when you want to leave without a 10-minute exit narrative. Say no without a story attached to it. This isn't rudeness. You're simply not performing your choices for an audience. And what happens over time is this. You start to trust yourself more. You start to hear your own thoughts again. Underneath all the noise of imagined voices and anticipated judgments, you find yourself, still there, still whole. If you've ever shrunk yourself for someone else's comfort, claim this. I know me, that's enough. Lesson 10. The life that becomes possible when you stop explaining. Everything we've covered has been building toward this. Stopping the explanation isn't the goal. The goal is what stopping the explanation makes room for. When you stop spending energy on explaining and justifying, when you reclaim all the mental and emotional bandwidth that was tied up in seeking approval, here's what that energy becomes available for. Your creativity expands. Most people don't realize how much creative energy is consumed by approval seeking. Every time you censor an idea before it's even born, every time you don't start a project because you're already imagining the criticism, that's creative energy that never finds expression. When you stop explaining and start doing, unfiltered, undefended, you access a level of output that most people never reach. Your relationships get dramatically better. When you stop over-explaining, when you stop performing for people, you become more authentic. And authenticity is magnetic. The connections you form when you're operating from genuine confidence are deeper, more reciprocal, and more sustaining than connections built on the performance of acceptability. Your decision-making improves radically. When other people's potential reactions aren't factored into every choice you make, you can hear yourself clearly. You start making choices based on what actually aligns with your values, your goals, your nature. And decisions made from that place of authentic clarity tend to be really, really good ones. And most importantly, you develop an unshakable sense of dignity. Dignity is not pride. Pride is about being better than others. Dignity is about being whole within yourself. When you stop needing external approval to feel valid, when you stop making your worth contingent on whether people understand and agree with your choices, you develop a quiet, solid sense of your own worth that nobody can take from you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" Replace anger with over-explanation, and that truth holds just as firmly. How much more grievous are the consequences of over-explaining, the lost confidence, the eroded identity, the drained energy, the damaged relationships, than the discomfort of simply allowing someone to not fully understand you? The discomfort of not explaining lasts a moment. The consequences of a lifetime of over-explaining last decades. There is a version of your life where you wake up every morning already knowing you're enough, where you make your choices from a place of peace, not panic, where the opinions of others are interesting, but not the foundation your life is built on. That version of your life is not years away. It doesn't require other people to change, or your circumstances to improve, or the world to become kinder. It's available right now. In the next decision you make, in the next moment you choose clarity over justification. It starts the moment you decide, my life is not up for explanation. If this video changed something in you today, seal it with this: I stopped explaining. I started living. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of all 10 lessons. Lesson 1. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You never signed that contract. Your inner world belongs to you. Protect it like the Stoics protected theirs. Lesson 2. Over-explaining is a trauma response. Understanding the why is how the pattern actually changes. Lesson 3. The more you explain, the less people believe you. Economy of speech is power. Lesson 4. The people who constantly need you to explain yourself reflect a trust deficit, either in the relationship or in yourself. Lesson 5. Silence is your superpower. The 3-second pause changes every high-stakes conversation. Lesson 6. Stop defending in conflict. Absorb. Respond from groundedness, not reactivity. Lesson 7. Use the ACE framework. Assert first. Minimal context. End the explanation. Lesson 8. There's a difference between explaining and communicating. One serves connection, the other serves fear. Lesson 9. Your identity is not up for public debate. Small, unexplained decisions rebuild self-trust one at a time. Lesson 10. The life that becomes possible on the other side of this is extraordinary. More creativity, better relationships, cleaner decisions, real dignity. And it starts now. If this video landed for you, if something shifted even just a little, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube this content matters, and it helps more people who need this find it. Subscribe if you're not already here.